right, y'all, I am here to tell you about a Pride and Prejudice retelling set in a burlesque club that absolutely grew on me the more that I read it. So I am here today to talk about an arc of Vanessa King's debut romance novel, A Certain Appeal. This was given to me by the publisher via Edelweiss for my honest and free review, and so I do thank them for that. I honestly am not sure what possessed me in the beginning to request this book. I'm not a Pride and Prejudice / Jane Austen fan. I know that that can be a big deal, and I have two friends who are massive Austen heads and they go gaga for every new thing. That's not me. I actually don't remember the last time I read Pride and Prejudice, and I think I had to do it for school. So for me, I'm not a super big fan of the story, and I'm not super up on many of the retellings that aren't like the Keira Knightley movie. So I want to put that up front as I give you my review, because it is positive, and it's possible that someone who's a much bigger fan of Pride and Prejudice as like a genre of books would have a different opinion. But for me, as a casual fan, this one definitely grew on me. So our main character is, of course, Liz Bennet. For most of this book, she goes by Bennet or Kitten or Liz. And this is because she has very separate identities at the start of this book. The first is when she is Kitten at a burlesque club. Now, a kitten is not necessarily a performer. A kitten can at times get on stage, but mostly she's there to pick up items that the performers have dropped, to hawk wares, to kind of be like customer service on the floor. And so that is her role, and she's called Kitten for that. The actual job title is called a kitten. And she came to this club called Meryton after her former career fell through. And what that former career was is not really mentioned in the beginning, but she had basically a master's degree in this. She had this amazing internship, and some really nasty things happened, and it just kind of flipped her life. So she went from living in California to this pretend town where this burlesque club lives, and moved in with her, not her best friend, but a friend that they met through their siblings named Jane. Jane is trained at Juilliard, and he also has a job at this burlesque club, although he also teaches piano and singing lessons, but he's a singer-performer at the burlesque club as well. There are other characters such as Ming Dynasty, which is a great pun, and I love it, who is a plus-size burlesque singer and performer who's also in charge of all of the costumes and is basically the brains of the operation half the time. Andrea, who owns the club. And at the start of this cozy family of burlesque performers finds out that the current owner of the building that houses their club is trying to sell it, and Andrea is trying to make a bid for it with a money backer who comes to see the show that night, and his name is Mr. Charles Bingley, and he brings his friend Will Darcy. Darcy is, of course, starchy, rhymes with Darcy, and Charles did not exactly tell him that his new investment was a burlesque club, so he is all kinds of out of sorts from go. Bennet and Darcy have, of course, an immediate attraction to each other, but of course, as Ming and Bennet are, getting some things out of the coat check, they overhear Darcy talking to Bingley, and Bingley is like, "Hey, what about that kitten?" And Darcy goes, "Well, certainly not enough to tempt me." So of course, Liz is like, "Well, he's definitely cute, but I'm not doing that." And so it kind of sets them at odds with each other. But Jane and Charles fall in love almost immediately. Jane basically serenades him from the stage, and they end up like getting together that night. So of course they're madly in love and trying to bring their friends together, and Bennet and Darcy have no desire to do so. So Bennet is Bennet at the club, where she is also sometimes Kitten, but she also has a day job, and her day job is as a receptionist slash administrator at a company called Work It, and she is currently designing a party for them, and she rents a space called Pemberley. And on her way to meet the owner of Pemberley, some scaffolding falls on Jane. He goes to the hospital and she misses her meeting. And so this is like the part of the book where Jane moves in with Charles, or Charles kind of moves in, and they're all getting like lovey-dovey and close because Jane's laid up with a head wound. And of course, Bennett finds out that Darcy owns Pemberley, a building and a space that she immediately falls in love with. Wickham shows up as a friend of Liz's boss and flirts with Liz and then flirts with her friends, and it's all kind of weird. So those are kind of the main players in this retelling that do actually make an appearance. There are others that don't, and I honestly thought that that was better than trying to shoehorn in the actual entire plot of Pride and Prejudice. It picks some of the highlights, uses those, and then continues on with its own story. The burlesque setting is also definitely a highlight. Vanessa King worked at a burlesque club for a number of years, so this is a lived experience that she is putting into the book. So you actually end up finding out a lot about how burlesque clubs are run, how the performers work, how that entertainment industry works. So I thought that was really, really interesting and not necessarily something I thought that I was going to get out of this book. But I think one of the immediate highlights is the communication. I often feel like one of the annoying things about many of these books, many like Pride and Prejudice retellings, is a problem with romance novels in general, which is there is a total lack of communication. And fairly early on in the book, Darcy is very uncomfortable with the idea of burlesque, and he calls it a manipulation. And very early on, Bennett and Darcy are able to have these conversations where Bennett says, well, let me just check you on that for a second and let me explain to you what burlesque means to me and how you are totally not understanding this situation. And Darcy listens and he responds and he changes his view of burlesque. And there are also other instances, I can't tell you because these are slightly more spoilery, of it happening in the reverse. So Darcy's like, hey, I think you need to check yourself. And Bennett's like, okay, tell me why. The letter does make an appearance. There is also that. But, they have, before they are in a relationship, even while they are not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things, they have this ability to communicate that comes through the entire story. And it's just really magical. And I really, really liked that. Again, I was not sold on this idea, this story, this adaptation in the beginning. There was a little bit of something about the writing in the beginning that seemed to really throw me off. But between the communication between our, immediate romantic pairing and then the side characters and all of that, like, it just comes together, and I think it makes a really sweet story that you see where the source material is, but it isn't hitting Pride and Prejudice beat for beat. Like I said, Wickham makes an appearance, but Liz doesn't have a lot of sisters who make an appearance. Some of the sisters' roles are assumed by, burlesque friends, but they're not all there. Not everything that happens in Pride and Prejudice happens in this book, just the ones that make sense for this story. So I just found that really well done. I hate when adaptations are like, it's the same story, just in a different place. That's not my favorite thing. And this just, I feel like it did it right. If a blow-by-blow adaptation is your thing, you might not like this book. And that is a-okay. But if anything that I have said is of interest to you, I do recommend that you pick it up. It wasn't a 5-star book for me. It didn't thoroughly blow me away, but it had enough special qualities, interesting things, and a really sweet story, and they communicated. So I was like, yep, I'm sold, I'm done. I would definitely recommend this to people. So thanks again to the publisher and Edelweiss for giving me a copy of this. It will come out in the next couple of weeks or so, barring more supply chain wackadoo. So if you don't know, because of coronavirus, the world, life, everything, the supply chain for books is really messed up right now. So if you are going to purchase books, particularly at bookstores, please do not give grief to the Barnes & Noble booksellers or the Books A Million booksellers or your local booksellers, whatever it is, because you can't get a book. There are a lot of books selling out. First printings are really small. And I mean, we're running out of things as simple as shopping bags. So that is a problem with the greater supply chain. If you want books for Christmas, order them now. I'm serious. So go to your local library, order this from a bookstore if it's not already available, and tell me what you like down in the comments. If you can think of other Pride and Prejudice retellings that are retellings without being immediate, beat by beat adaptations, also leave me those in the comments and I will happily add them to my TBR. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.